Am I good?
Yeah, you're good to start.
Okay. All right, I guess I'm going to start now. Hello, guys. So, we're still talking.
Sanji.
Hello.
We're trying to work, Sanji.
All right. I am Pat Jameson, and this is a little bit about me. I was a front-end engineering intern at Yahoo and Facebook. I'll be at Google after I graduate, and I'm going for a computer science degree at UB, obviously, I'm here. But so this is a multi-part workshop, just like the Android one. The first week, which is this week, is going to be HTML and CSS. So if you've done a lot of HTML and CSS before, this is probably going to be super boring for you. Basically, if you know what margin zero auto means, then you don't need to be here. So week 2, I'm going to be talking about Flask and Heroku. Flask is a Python library that allows you to build backends for websites, and Heroku will allow us to host it online. And then week 3, I'll be talking about JavaScript. Week 4, I'll be talking about databases, specifically Postgres and SQL Alchemy. And you can look into those yourself if you want to and read ahead, get yourself ready for those weeks. But for today, we'll be sticking with HTML and CSS. So let's just get started. Open your text editor. If you are using Sublime Text, that's great. If not, whatever, doesn't matter. Type anything into the text file and save it as whatever.html. As long as it has .html, it's pretty much fine. And then open it in a browser. So I'll be doing the same thing with you guys. So I'm just going to be typing in whatever. I'm awesome. Saving it. I already saved it. I saved it as whatever.html. And then double click it. It might ask you to select a program to open it in. You can select Chrome or Firefox or whatever you use. And this is what you should see. You should see just some text. And this is a web page. This is a fully functional web page. It just has text on it, but technically it's a web page. If you hosted this online, and we'll get into that later, this would work. And that's pretty cool. One of the best things about web development for me is that you can see what you've done instantly. You don't have to wait for anything to compile. You don't have to do anything special. You can just save it and then look at it, and it's great. So let's get into, all right, where is everything? All right, so do you guys all do that? Everything went okay? Good, nice. So let's get into a little bit about HTML itself. The basic structure of HTML is based around tags. So you have a tag name, which is encompassed by 2 less than greater than signs, and an end close tag. So when you use a tag, you want to open it with this, and then close it with the tag name with a slash. And then everything else goes in between. And we'll see lots of examples of that today. You can do other stuff with this. You can add an attribute, and we'll see some of those today. It's very simple. All you have to do is the attribute name, and then equals, and then the attribute value. Sometimes you'll even see the tag name by itself. Sometimes tags don't need anything else besides just the tag name. And we'll also see examples of that today. So this is a very basic HTML page. This is a little bit more complicated than what we just typed in, but it'll basically do the same thing. We have the Doctype, and the Doctype is essentially telling you the version of HTML that the browser will use to render this page. If you don't have this Doctype, it's basically an undefined whatever. The browser will just do whatever. Some browsers will do the correct thing most of the time. Some browsers won't. You'll find that if you don't have a Doctype, Internet Explorer will sometimes just not work a lot. But it's good to just have this Doctype. There's other types that you can have besides just HTML. But for now, this is good. If you want to know, this is specifically saying that the Doctype we're using is HTML5, which is the latest HTML specification version. So yeah, moving on, we have our first actual opening and closing tag, the HTML tag. And this is where everything will go. Everything, except for the Doctype, will go inside of this HTML block. Inside of that, you have body. And body will have everything that is content on your website. And we'll have one other tag within this called head in a second, and we'll get to that. So if you want to type this out and run it, you'll see that it does just about the same thing as before, which isn't very exciting just yet. So yeah. Does anyone not have the slides on their computer? Because I can move on and... Okay. Anyone have any questions about this? Any questions about doc types? Any questions about... Okay. So now, the second one that we'll be adding is head, which is the head tag up there. And it contains everything else that isn't in body. It'll contain the website title, which is... The website title, which is, for example, on this page, the website title is WebDev Week 1 on top. And then on this one, it's patjameson.com.github.io. That's the page title, okay? It can contain the CSS, which is what styles the page. We'll get to that in a second. It contains the JavaScript, and it contains stuff like meta tags, which aren't very useful right now, but there are some meta tags that are useful, and you can look them up by yourself. I won't be getting into them. But basically anything that isn't direct content will be going into the head. So if I go to here. So we can add a head tag like this. And we can title the web page. So if you do this right now and load the page again, you'll see that the title of the web page will be shown up on top. And I'll do that right now just to show you. So let's do, I'm going to copy and paste this so it's easier on me. Oops. Zoom out a little bit. All right. So if I save this and go back to my page that I had before, you'll see, oh, it looks about the same as before. And that's good. That's what we wanted to do. But you can see the title of the web page has changed on top. So now we have the title of the web page, and this is an awesome website. Very simple so far. Does anyone have any questions about that? Good, good. There shouldn't be too much confusion. So let's get a little bit more interesting. So this is the first thing that people usually try to do. They try to add another line to HTML. And if we tried to do that with our site, then what will happen is that, which isn't what you would normally expect. You would expect it to go to the next line because that's how you've dealt with stuff in the past. And the reason it doesn't go to the next line is because HTML doesn't really care about new lines or anything like that. So what you have to do is add more tags. And the first tag that we'll be using, that isn't just the basic body tag, is paragraphs. So what we can do is add p tags. And you can see that I'm still doing the open and close on the end, and open and close on the end. And what this will do is it will create a paragraph. It's like a book when if you want to make this a book for some reason, and you have, this is an awesome website, and Patchy is awesome, this will create two separate paragraphs and make them separate. So we can see that right now. And if we go to our website, you can see that now they're on two separate lines because they're two separate paragraphs. Okay. So moving on. There's lots of other tags we can use. And the first set of tags that I'm going to introduce are headings. So headings allow you to add titles to certain sections or pages, and what these will do is bold it and make it a little bit bigger. And we can see what will happen if I do that here. We can say H1, what did I say? On the topic, awesome. And then close it. We can see that it makes it bigger, it makes it bolder, sort of like a title would do. And so there's a few other ones that we can use. We can do H1, which is the biggest one, or we could do a lower number. So H2 would be slightly smaller, slightly less large, and it goes all the way to H6. So you can use it as you want, and that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. All right. So now lists. UL is an unordered list. OL is an ordered list, and I'll show you the difference in a second. And then LI is a list element. So now this is the first tag that we see where they interact with each other. So if we do UL, what it would do is bullet points. And I'll show you that right now. Let's just make something. Actually, I have this. So if we do this, we do UL, open, close, always close. And then we say list of awesome people with the H2 tag. LI, close LI, LI, close LI. This will create a bulleted list of these two names. So I'll do that right now. I'll copy and paste this. Okay. Pretty simple. Oh, this is word list column. Pretty simple. And if we do that, we can see the H2 tag being bolded, a little bit larger, and then the list of names that I had. And it's bulleted, which is pretty cool. If we wanted to make it numbered, all we have to do is change UL to OL. And then we can see that it's numbered. So that's about it for that. I know this is very exciting so far. And the last tag that we'll be going over today is links, and then we'll get into CSS, and that's a little bit more exciting. So to make a link on a page, all you have to do is make an A tag with the attribute href. So this is the first attribute that we're running into, and the value of whatever website you want. I'm self-promoting myself. That's my website. You should go to it. Pretty cool. So A stands for anchor. There's an anchor on the page. It's a link. It goes to somewhere else. And href stands for text reference. So let's do an example. I'm going to change this from awesome people to awesome stuff. Add another list element. I'll do a href. I'm going to do another line because we're running out of room. Resume drop. So you see all I'm doing is doing a list element, doing an anchor, and then putting the name in. Make sure you get the ordering of this correct. You should always close the tag once you're done with it, and make sure it's in the right order. Some silly thing that I was taught when I was learning HTML is that as far as tags go, it's kind of like putting your shoes and socks on. If you put your sock on and then your shoe on, you wouldn't try to take your sock off then, because that wouldn't make sense, and it would be pretty difficult, and probably end up with your sock broken. So pay attention to the ordering, pay attention to when you close stuff, and definitely close stuff. I've seen some pretty funny websites that were old because at one point you didn't need to close your h2 tags, and it stayed like that. And actually, I want to pull it up because it's funny, just to show you what happens when you don't close your tags. No, I'll probably not be able to find it. Basically, the site was a bunch of h2 tags, and it just kept getting larger and larger and larger, because if you put h2 tags in h2 tags, it gets larger and larger and larger before it's like the whole page, and then, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So yeah, those are some basic HTML tags that we'll be using. I'll be going over, I think, one more, the div tag, in just a little bit after some CSS. But does anyone have any questions so far? Got anything? Yes.
Can you put lists inside of lists? Like if you have say a list of awesome stuff, can you then put an unordered list within it?
I believe so. Let's try it. So let's do UL. I don't know what it's going to look like, because I don't think I've ever done this, but technically you should be able to. Let's see what that does. So that's what that does. So that is what happens when you put a list in a list. And I believe if you do another list element here, it will have another dot below it. Let me just try it. Yeah. So the best way to learn stuff and figure out what happens is just to try it. The best thing about HTML and CSS and anything is that you can find out what happens instantly. It's great. So yeah.
Quick question. Do you have to do like, see how you just had an H2 there but no H1? Do you have to like maintain that order? Or
you don't have to maintain that order.
Okay.
Usually you would want to have H2 be a like sub header to H1 and so on, but you don't have to maintain that order. You don't have to start with H1. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have to use H at all if you don't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see in a second with divs. You can do whatever you want with divs. They're basically a blank tag, and you could technically make the styling of div the same as H2. But again, you don't need to worry about the ordering. HTML is very free as far as what you can do with it. All right, cool. So let's go back to this. All right, so CSS. Now it gets a little bit more exciting. CSS is the hard part of the HTML and CSS. It takes a long time to become a master of CSS, just like it is to be a master of anything, like any programming languages or whatever. It's pretty simple to start, but there's a lot of hacky stuff that you'll find you have to do, especially when you want stuff to work in all browsers, because it's basically like writing C, but then having to deal with different compilers. I can imagine it's pretty annoying, but even worse. All right, so CSS styles the elements on the page. It lets you change the colors, it lets you change the text sizes, the element sizes, the font, the position, padding, and margins, and we'll get into those differences in a second, and a bunch more. So we'll be talking about just a small subset of CSS, but there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. So it will take probably years to know what you're doing. Even I'm not an expert at CSS, but I know the basics. So this is the basic format. You'll notice that we're now in the head tag. We're not in the body. So remember when I said before that CSS goes in that head? And the basic format of CSS is the style tag with a type of text/CSS. You can also do external style sheets, but I'll get into that actually next time, not this time. You can look it up if you want to. But for now, we'll be doing the CSS on the same file as everything, just to make it simpler. So we have the selector, and I'll get into that in a second, the property, and the value. So the selector can be something like P. Remember P, paragraph? This is basically saying that I want to select all the P elements in the page and make the color blue. So let's do that. Let's try doing that here. Style tag. P, color blue. And let's see if that works. Oh, I didn't have any P's. Should probably put some P's in there. Test for blue. And you can see that the P tag that we just added is now blue. So you can do that with anything. We can do that with list elements, the LIs. We can do that with the H tags. So we can do LI, color red. And you'll see that everything right there is red, except for the link, which you will have to override if you want to. And I can get into that later if you want to, or you can look it up. Basically, there's a default style on the link, on the anchor tag, that overrides most stuff unless you do it manually. So in order to do this, you would have to style the anchor tag and color it red. But I won't get into that. You can try it out on your own, look it up. There's a few quirks with it, but I won't get into that now. Okay, so what other stuff can you do with CSS? So this is a few of the things you can do as far as text styling goes. You can change the color, which is what we did. And there's 3 different types of color values. You can do red, or blue, or green, or whatever. Most browsers support the basic colors. A lot of the time, people use this, which is the hex value of the color. And one cool thing that you can do in Chrome or Firefox is you can inspect the element. And I'm sure a lot of you have done this at some point just to see what it would do. And you can see all the styles that we added to this. Now, we added the style red, and Chrome automatically converted it to hex. But one cool thing is if we hit this red right here, it'll give us a color box, so we can change it in line and not have to worry about changing it, refreshing it, changing it, refreshing it. And we can just pick our own colors. And I do this a lot just to see what a color would look like and before I have to do it. So I'm going to change it to this random color. I'm just going to copy and paste this into my CSS. So instead of red, I'll do the hex value of that purple-ish color. And now when I refresh it, it's that color. The other option you have is doing the RGB values, which for red are 25500. That's just another way to do it. I don't usually do it that way. I don't see it too often done that way, but it's possible. So the next one is font size. And you'll see 12 pixels. That makes sense, right? Note that pixels in CSS doesn't really mean pixels. Because browsers do funny things, people zoom in a lot, but you don't have to worry about that too much. Pixels aren't really recommended for fonts nowadays. EMs are. Now, EMs are a proportional unit. So 1 EM is the browser's default size. 1.5 EM is 50% more. 2 EM is 2 times the size. So that makes a little bit of sense. And yeah, I would recommend using EMs. It makes it easier, especially when people have certain extensions in their computer that make it zoom in or change the font size of browsers, especially people with that are like have bad sight or low vision. There's a lot of accessibility stuff that you have to know. But for now, I would recommend doing EMs. You can mess around with it. You can see what it looks like. You can see what 1.5 EM actually looks like. Moving on, we have font weight. Font weight basically allows you to do bold or not. You can set the font weight to bold or normal. Font style is similar except italics. You can do italics or normal. Font decoration allows you to do underlines. It allows you to do line throughs, which is just like through the text. Overline, which I found out today. I didn't even know there was overline. I guess you can do overline. Or none, which is the default. Text transform allows you to do capitalize, uppercase, lowercase. I've seen it done for uppercase because you might think, like, why not just make it uppercase to begin with? But if you're styling a page, some pages will make the font capitalized because it looks better in certain cases. So it's easier to do it in CSS if you want to change it later. Font family allows you to change the font. For now, I'll just tell you how to use font family actually right now. So font family is a little bit different in that there are multiple, I'll just show you, hold on. So I'm going to change the font of the entire website. Right now it's kind of Times New Roman, I believe. Not very exciting. So I'm going to change it to Arial. So let's do body, font family, Arial. Now, what font family does is it will check to see if Arial exists on the computer, because certain fonts won't exist in certain browsers and certain OSs and a lot of things. So you want to add a few of these. You can do Arial and then sans serif, which will pick, how do you spell serif? There we go, got it. So if the computer doesn't have Arial, which most will, it'll pick just the default sans serif in the browser, which will usually work. And if that fails, then it will just do whatever the browser wants. But that's why you will see multiple fonts in the font family. It's just separated by a comma. And if we reload the page, we can see that now everything is Arial, which is nice. Okay, so now it's starting to look a little bit nicer because it's not Times New Roman, which is super boring. So let's see what I missed. Okay, so let's do some more interesting stuff. Let's see. So borders. This is how you do a border. All you have to do is change the border style to solid. You can also do dashed. There's a few other ones you can look up. I recommend using Google a lot for these kind of things. You can just Google like border and CSS, and then it'll show you exactly what to do for every situation you could possibly need. And so if you set the border style to solid, it will create a border. By default, I think it's like 3 pixels, but I like 1 pixel a lot, so I'm going to do 1 pixel, which is just border width, 1 pixel. So let's see, I'll do it on the paragraph. Yeah, I'll do it on the paragraph. So if I do border style solid, we can see what it looks like. Yeah, you can see it looks like about 3 pixels. I don't exactly know what the default is. So I usually always set it anyway. Border width, 3 pixels or 1 pixel. And that's 1 pixel. So now we can have a border on stuff. You'll see exactly how big this element is. It goes all the way to the other side of the page. It's 100%. So what else can we do with border? Well, we can decide which side we want the border on. All we have to do is specify the side. in the middle. Border bottom style, border bottom width. So if we add that to this bottom, we can see now it's only on the bottom, which is pretty cool. It's actually really cool when you want to do, say, on headers. Sometimes I'll put a border bottom just to separate the content more. It's pretty nice. So now that we know borders, we can get into padding and margins, because now we can actually see how big the content is. So anyone have any questions so far about borders or text styling, or anyone run into problems when they were trying this? Is anyone trying this? Anyone following along? Okay. If you have any questions, just like stop me. Oh, you have a question?
So these are all common across all the paragraphs. What if I want to apply a style on one paragraph but not the other?
So the one way you can do that is there's conditional HTML statements. So you can say load this style sheet for this browser. If you look up conditional style sheets, you can pretty much find it, I think. Yeah, there's a bunch of them. And it'll tell you what to do. It looks something like this, like if IE, then use that style sheet. And then you can do, yeah, so this is often used for IE because Internet Explorer often sucks and you have to do specific stuff for it. And yeah, so if you want to target only IE7, and there's a bunch of different targets you can use. And that'll get most of your use cases down. But if it doesn't, you can always Google it, and then, yeah. Any other questions so far? Cool. So, padding. So what if we want to add a little space between this and this? Well, we can add some padding. So let's add some padding to that, and you can see what that actually does. So I'll also add some padding. I'll do 5 pixels. And then we can see, okay, we added some padding. Now, if you notice, this text moved a little bit. And that's because the padding added padding all around. So if we get rid of this bottom, we can actually see it happening. So now the border will be all around it again. And you'll see that there's now a lot of space in between all the sides of the element. So if we add that back, if all we wanted to do was add padding to the bottom, what do you think we should do?
Padding bottom.
Yeah, exactly, padding bottom. So you can see a lot of stuff transfers from from property to property. From, for example, bottom, top, left, right. So if we do that, we can see that it only adds it for the bottom. As we can see now, it moved up a little bit. So that's pretty useful. But let's add another paragraph for a second. What if we wanted to add more space in between these two? Well, one way to do it is we can add padding to the bottom of this, but that's not very good. What if can we add padding to the bottom of this line? And that's where margins come in. So margins and padding are pretty similar in that they both add space in between stuff. But the difference is where they're located. So if we look at this diagram, we can see that the element box is in the middle. That's where all the text is. That's where anything inside of the element is. Then we have the padding box, which happens in between the element box and the border box. And then we have the margin box, which happens outside of that. So if we wanted to add space below the border, we have to add margins. So let's see. Let's add I'll do it for all P's. Let's add margin bottom 20 pixels just to really show what's going on. And we can see that that barely moved. Yeah. So there's a default style for all of them. Sometimes elements will have padding. Paragraph has a default of, it looked like, at least 5 pixels. And a lot of the time, what people will do is reset their CSS. This is just a little, this is one of the first hacks that you'll see. And they'll do margin 0 and then padding 0 on the star selector, which selects everything. And that way, all of the defaults that the browsers have are gone, and they can start from scratch. For now, I'm not going to use it, but I thought I'd bring that up, just in case you're really confused about why certain things have default stuff. So yeah. And moving on. Any questions on that? Okay, so next we'll be talking about classes, and I wanted to use a class just then, but I didn't talk to you about it yet. So let's go back to this example. We have the list of awesome people, me and Elon Musk. That's like the entire list. That's all you need. And let's say I only want to style my name. Let's say I want to bold people who are really awesome. So we can add a class, which is an attribute, like we talked about before, same with a link with the href. And the value is whatever class name you want. And what we can do is we can go into the CSS and target only this class instead of just all the list elements. So it looks something like this. You'll notice that the only difference between this and us targeting the paragraphs or the list is that I have a dot in front. And that dot just says that I'm targeting a class called really awesome, and I want the color to be red. So let's add a class to our example. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Yeah, that works. So I'll add a class, really awesome. Really awesome. It has to be one word, because if you have a space in between, then that's 2 classes. So you can have more than one class on one element, but make sure that one class is always one word. So I'll do really awesome. I'll add it to our CSS. And then I'll make the color red. Oops, not read, red. So if we go back to here, we can see that now my name is red and the rest of it isn't. And isn't this a beautiful website? So yeah, that's really all that you need to know for classes. You can add classes to that. Then yeah, any questions about classes before I move on? I'm going to be using classes and a new tag div to do the final thing for today. But first, div. Div is kind of a blank tag. It can be used when no other tag seems right. So if it's not a paragraph, it's not a list, it's not a header or something, then you can use a div. It's usually used to wrap other tags together. That's at least my main use for it. So this is the first real hacky thing in CSS, which is centering elements. You would think that centering elements is easy and straightforward, but it's really not. So what I'm doing here is I have 2 divs, one that's called content wrapper and one that's called content. And then the content is just what we've done so far. So I'm gonna copy and paste that in just to show you what this looks like. I'm gonna delete all of this crap for now. And then delete all this for now. I'll keep it fun. Okay, so this should be back to the original example that we had before I messed up everything. And then, so let's say that we want to center this. There's a few things we need to do. One is to have an outer and inner tag. So we have the outer, which is the content wrapper, and the inner, which is content. And then we need to style it. And the way we do that is this. So content wrapper, I say with 100% just for this example. If you want to center it within another thing, then you might need to change that. But for now, I'm just going to do with 100%. The content I want to do with 650 pixels. And then this is the secret. This is the thing I said in the beginning, if you knew what this meant, that you didn't really need any of this. Margin 0 auto. So what this does is it says, okay, I'm going to put the 0, I'm going to put the margin as 0 on the top and bottom. You can actually make this any number you want, but I'm doing 0 for now. And then auto. So what this will do is it will say, for the top and bottom, I want 0. And for the left and right, I want auto. And what auto will do is it will take all of the available space and split it between the sides, essentially centering it. So let's see what this looks like. Oops. Copy and paste this in here. All right, so I'm gonna copy paste that, save it, and then let's see if I can. Oh, it didn't work. It didn't work. Hold on. Now you can see me debugging.
I think you flipped them backwards.
Did I flip them backwards? What happened there?
Content wrapper should be only 650. Content should be 100%.
No, not at all. That doesn't make sense.
The content wrapper is 650.
Hold on. Hold on. Oh, you know why, maybe?
I'm telling you.
Probably. I'm gonna try one thing. What's going on? I'm missing something.
Try it.
No, I just did this before. I tried this. Hold on. No, that doesn't. Oh, you know what? I know why. So when I copy and pasted it, the quotations got messed up.
Oh.
And they weren't actually quotations. Told you. Sorry. Anyway, I was right. I just didn't copy paste correctly. All right, so back to what I was talking about. So what this does is it says, okay, I'm going to set the content wrapper, and if you hover over stuff when you inspect elements, you can see where the element is and how big it is and everything. So you can see it's 100%, exactly what we wanted. And we can see the inner class is 650 pixels. You can see exactly how big it is here. And we said that the margin on the left and right should be auto, which means it'll split the sides evenly and center, which is pretty cool. If we wanted to center like this, for example, this list of awesome people, within that, all we have to do is set H2 text align center, which is yet another style tag or property, and then it'll center that as well. Yes?
What if the height of the wrapper class was 100%?
What if the height of what was 100%?
Wrapper class, the content wrapper.
If the height was?
Yeah.
Then
How would you center it?
Oh, center it vertically?
Yeah.
Oh.
You can't.
You can. So
It's
centering horizontally is already a hack, as you can see. Centering vertically is even more of a hack.
Do you have to subtract the?
Yeah, you can. There's a few different ways to do it. You can do. How do you usually do it? Like minus 50%.
I use
You just don't
JavaScript.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to use it in a practical example, it's going to be wrong because it's going to do 100% of the height of the page unless it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
wrapper.
Yeah, and if the height of the page is more than the height of this, which it usually is, especially when people have like 0 pixels to work with on this, it usually just doesn't work. Sometimes you'll see things pop up in the middle, and what they'll do is they'll do position absolute, which will say, okay, I want this to be 50% in the middle, and then they subtract like the width of the thing, and it's a hack. It
Or
really
they
is.
grab-
You can look it up. You can look up vertical
Okay.
centering in CSS, but
There's hacks,
I'm not
yeah.
going to go over it today.
Okay.
So yeah,
Some people use JavaScript to do it, and they'll get the width and height of the page and then calculate
Yeah.
it based on the width and the height of the box they're trying to position.
yeah.
And then you can calculate it.
Yeah. So centering it horizontally is the first of many hacks that you'll see when you're learning CSS. But yeah, any other questions about?
Can you just like in 2 seconds go over the margin 0 auto again?
Yeah. So I probably should have explained this a little bit more. Before, what we were doing is we were doing margin bottom or padding bottom, but you can actually do it in one line and say margin. Let's do another example. You can do margin 10, 25.
Oh, so
30,
it's going around.
50. Yeah, so what this will do, actually you have to do like pixels. What this will do is start from the top and then go clockwise. So it'll say, okay, the top margin is 10 pixels, the right margin is 25 pixels, the bottom margin is 30 pixels, and the left margin is 50 pixels. And there's a few other ones you can do. You can do it with just 2. And what this will do is it'll say, okay, the top and bottom are 10 pixels, the left and right are 25. And you just kind of have to memorize that. And then you can do 1, and that'll say everything is 10 pixels. So another way to write what I just wrote is I can do margin top 0 pixels, margin bottom 0 pixels, margin left auto, margin right auto, and yeah. Does that help a little bit more?
Yeah. Totally get it.
Okay. Any questions? Yes.
What if you just did margin right auto and didn't do margin left auto? What would that?
I actually don't know. I've only used auto for centering. Let's try it out. So if we do 0, auto 0, 0.
Boom, browser.
Can't do that in the presentation. 0, auto 0, 0. Let's try it out.
I don't think
Nothing useful.
Yeah, I don't think
I think it just does nothing. I wonder if it's, so that's the right side. I wonder about the left. So left, because that makes sense because it's automatically doing nothing on the right side, but that's what it would be default. Okay, so it will just take the available space and just get the rest of it and put it on that side. So yeah. And if you have 2 autos, 1 on each side, it'll take the available space and split it in half. So that makes sense, yeah. Cool. Anything else? Awesome. So that's everything for this week. It isn't the most exciting things. These aren't the most exciting things. But next week is a little bit more exciting because we'll be getting a website online with Heroku, and I'll be using Flask. You can look these up if you want. Mess around with Heroku. I especially recommend it if you haven't used Git before. We'll be using Git next time. We'll be using very simple Git. We won't have to deal with too much stuff. As long as you can like commit, you're good. Further reading. A lot of this stuff was based on the introduction stuff in htmldog.com. There's also intermediates and advanced lessons that you can go on and learn about. They also have JavaScript stuff, which I will be getting to for a while now. And if you want to get something online, I recommend using GitHub pages. So if you go to this site, you'll have to know how to commit. Yeah, you'll have to know how to commit, but goes through it pretty nicely. It asks you what client are you using, and you can just say GitHub for Windows if that's what you downloaded from GitHub. Then you have to set up a repository, but you can go through this yourself. And if you have any questions, you can ask me next time or email me. I can put up my email.
Could we have just done div and then text line center the div to get it centered?
No, you can't. So what that will do is it'll center all the text inside of that div.
But I can't have a div inside of a div and then try to center it in the middle div?
No. You have to use the margin auto.
Can you show some practical examples of like some of the tags being used on real websites?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
a list or something?
I can try to at least.
Some headings?
Oh, I can. I know.
You can do it right on
Perfect.
that.
So for my software engineering 2 class, I made this site. Very simple. Some of the stuff I didn't teach you, like how to make this. And if you look up grids, then I just used a grid. That's a little bit more advanced than I want to get into right now. It's not too hard, it's just I don't want to get into it right now. But let's look at the source of this page. So I just have some simple CSS. I changed the line height a little bit. Changing the line height just makes it a little bit more readable. And this is just some small tweaks that I made. But it's very simple, CSS. I used an H2 tag, and then a paragraph tag, an H3 tag, an H3 tag, a paragraph tag, and so on. I used an EM tag, which is just italics, as you can see. You can also do strong, which is, I guess, bold. And then, yeah. So, I mean, a few more tags that we didn't go over, but you can see a practical use of this. What other websites could I do?
Resume drop.
Yeah.
We can look at resume drop. So this is resume drop. Again, I use grids for these. So let's see what I do. It's probably not even that good of code. Yeah, I use divs a lot, as you can see. Oh, I vertical aligned this. Let's see what I did. I think I did. I have zero pixels to work with here.
No, you just probably.
No, I probably didn't vertical align it. I don't know. What do you want to see? Okay. That's about it for now. Next time we'll go over forms, and we'll be able to like. Next time we'll be starting the main project in this, which is building a, I guess we can call it an anonymous Twitter clone. Because I say anonymous not because we want to be cool and be anonymous, but because I don't want to go over how to make users and websites. But yeah, I can talk about making users a little bit in the databases portion of it. The reason users are a little bit more difficult is because if you're handling passwords, then you have to be really on your security game because it's not good. People reuse passwords and then your site gets hacked and then all of their main accounts get hacked and then it's a bad time for you. So I'll go over some of that in the 4th session, I guess, which is the databases. Yeah. Any final questions before I wrap up? Cool. Cool. Hey, Josh. Did you just get back? No.